In this tutorial, I will show you one way again to generate integers, but this time using the function randi. But I'm going to take the exact same example that I did in another tutorial using rand. So randi imax, that's the syntax that is required at least for this function. It generates an integer, so already right there MATLAB knows it's no longer a float, but rather an integer, between 1 and the argument provided. So both are included this time. So this is a little bit different than rand, that doesn't include the boundaries and it also starts at 0. This one starts at 1 already, so you're not really generating between 0 and 1 yet. And then it does include the 1 and the value, the argument provided. For example, if I did a 5, notice on my first try I ended up with a 5. So it's a little bit different than rand alone. But it's also a versatile function. It can be used in a different fashion. As you notice at the top, it's a completely different idea. You now have a set of brackets as well, with two numbers inside, an imin and an imax, so an integer minimum and an integer maximum. Both are still included, but you need the regular parentheses for the function, you need the square brackets because they're mandatory. However, the comma is optional. So in this example, I wanted to generate between -5 and 5. Both are included. It's such a big interval, so you notice I haven't really hit any of the negatives, but I could have kept going, and you can definitely, and you should try this a little bit. It will generate between the two values included. So let me take the examples that we did. We did an example about games. If you kind of remember, or you don't maybe, the number of players, we set it by a variable, and I kind of introduced a little bit more comments, but we want to keep it more than 3 players because it's a game. And then we decided who played first, who played second. At this point, I could very well generate the same number, so maybe player 1 gets to play twice in a row, why not? And then we had cards, and again, I could have same card 1 equals card 2. But this was using seal, round, and floor. I showed all 3 options. What if I want to use randi instead? So instead of rand, it's randi. And it's no longer multiplied, it's in actual function. So randi number of player would generate a number between 1, so now we start at 1, and the number specified as the argument, which happens to be a 4. So that's exactly what I wanted. I wanted 1, 2, 3, or 4th player to start first. Okay, so on this one, you notice it's a little bit faster to type. The downfall is some languages don't have that function, and that's really why we want to teach you both options. So let's see if it works. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 2, 4, 4, 3, 1, 4, 2. So we see there's a randomization at least, but the syntax is a little bit easier to do. This one we wanted to generate between a 1 and a 10. So again, the 1 is already included. We don't have to worry about it. It is not a multiplication anymore. It's not a function that gives a value and then you multiply it. No. It's a function that requires an argument. Okay, and again, there's a million ways of using this. Okay, maybe 10 ways of using it. We're focusing on way number 1 and way number last. Okay, but this will generate between a number between 1 and 10, both included. So a little bit faster, but again, not all languages allow you to do this. Yay, it works. Okay, as far as the rocket testing, so if you remember, I told you to not look at the bottom. We're not focusing on if statement, but we generated 0 and 1. Now randi starts at 1. So how do I generate between 0 and 1? There is 2 ways. If I just do randi and I want between 0 and 1, well, how about I do between 1 and 2 and I subtract 1? Okay, that's the first way of doing it. I'm still gonna get, let me take the semicolon out, 1, 1, 1, 0, 0, 1, 1, 0. So it still works. I mean, it still generates between 1 and 2, so 1 or 2 included, but then I subtract 1, so whatever I get, I'll end up with either 0 or 1. What's another way of doing it? That's this time using the other syntax I showed you. So parentheses because it's a function, just like sine, cosine, you need the parentheses. Brackets because that's how it works. And on the inside, you indicate the bottom and the top, the two boundaries that you want. I want it between 0 and 1. And the interest, again, is that both are included. So let me see if rocket fueled all of a sudden gives us a 2 or a 3. Nope. 0, 1, 0, 1, 1, 1, 1, 0, 0. So that's another way of doing it. Okay. Whichever way you prefer, notice they're both kind of bulky. This is easier to type at this time, but I'm not saying that tomorrow I'll prefer the other one. Alright, so that was easy to do. The last example we did was the credit card. So we had an original credit card. We had to generate a number between 11111 and 999. So here, randi, and it actually would be easier to just use my comment as a starting point. The comma is optional. You can put a space here. It's a little bit number, so that might look better. I'm not sure this with spaces would work. Nope, it wouldn't work. So I'm going to take the spaces out. It was easy for me to put spaces to separate 4 digits at a time. Okay, so that still works. Again, the number shows as an exponential. If you really want to see the key, which is really the secret code, you should never print a key. Well, just %d, because it is an integer. And then let MATLAB actually do the work. So put semicolons everywhere. So here was the key generated. And again, it's an integer between those two values, both included this time. Now again, some of you might be asking yourself, why should I bother learning RAND? This is a class about programming and we happen to be using MATLAB, but that could change in a couple years. So RAND is known practically in every language. I have yet to find one that doesn't have this function spelled exactly the same. randi, however, does not exist in C language, for example. So you do have to know how to do the math. And keep in mind, this is what you're about to get into with engineering. A lot of math, a lot of equation. Plus, minus, divide, and multiply are actually the simplest things so far. You are required to be able to apply both methods, so just keep in mind to practice one, the one that's not obvious to you. Keep it practice, practice, practice. So wrapping up, the only new notion was randi, and I did a lot of examples, but I took the previous examples, I used variables again, so that's about it.